Welcome to the PA is In podcast, where we discuss entrepreneurship and evidence-based tools for running a small business. Tune in to learn how to translate your clinical skills into business tools. Today's episode is for the clinician who has a business idea scribbled in the notes app of their phone, a coaching offer that they can't stop thinking about it, a dream of a course, of a product, of a small business, a creative idea that just won't leave them alone. But they keep asking themselves, how do people actually do this? How do you go from clinician seeing patients in the exam room to an entrepreneur making deals in literally any other kind of room? Do you keep working full time and build it on the nights and weekends and cracks of your day? Do you go down to part time, or do you quit your clinical job, jump off the cliff, and build the airplane on the way down? There's no one right answer here. It depends. It all depends on you, your risk tolerance, your financial situation, your current life and season, and your dreams. Here's the thing. I've seen clinicians succeed in business in all three ways. But each of these paths has trade-offs. Each path has risks and benefits, different speeds to scale, variable return on investments, and each path requires different levels of financial margin, energy, support, time investment and flexibility, risk tolerance, and, well, your own nervous system capacity. So today, I want to walk you through the three most common ways clinicians transition into entrepreneurship, along with the pros and the cons, and who each path tends to work best for. Okay, let's get into it. There was a moment not that long ago where I realized something that made me really uncomfortable. I realized that clinicians are the best people to fix the way that we deliver care, but most providers have no idea how to run a business. We jump into entrepreneurship thinking, I just need a great idea, the perfect logo, maybe a website, no sales, no beta testing the market, not beginning your business with the end in mind. But then we wonder why it feels so hard, why our business is not growing, and why it's not paying us much or at all. Because no one taught us how to run a small business. Here's the reframe that changed everything for me. Your business is like a body. And if you don't know how to assess, diagnose, and treat it, it gets sick, needs resuscitation, and dies. Leadership, that's your business's brain. Marketing, its lungs. Sales are the heart. Cash flow is the circulation. And suddenly, everything clicks for clinicians. Because you already know how to do this. You just need to translate your clinical skills into business tools. And that's exactly what we do inside the Clinician Entrepreneur Collective. It's your small business clinical rotation, which makes me your business preceptor. Inside the Clinician Entrepreneur Collective, we take what you already know as a clinician, your incredible ideas and dreams, and turn those into a business that works, sells, scales, and actually pays you. And if you're ready to learn how to actually do that, we start our next cohort on July 1st. Head to tracybingaman.com/waitlist to join us. Option one is to start the side hustle while you keep working full-time. This is probably the most common path that clinicians take when they dabble in entrepreneurship or are starting their pivot into entrepreneurship. You keep your full-time job and build the business before work, after work, on weekends or days when you don't have to go to the office, and occasionally while driving in your car, voice noting content ideas into your phone before commuting home. No judgment. We've all been there, trying to squeeze those ideas and make sure you get them down when they come to you in the midst of your already very busy life. The biggest pro of this approach is the safety and relative stability. Your clinical job continues to pay the bills while the business is still learning how to do just that. That financial stability matters for most people. Because one of the hardest things and the biggest pressures for early stage businesses is that they often aren't consistently profitable right out of the gate. Your clinical income becomes the ballast, the stabilizer, the thing that gives you enough margin to experiment without panicking every 5 seconds. And if that side hustle starts generating extra income, that can feel incredibly empowering and give you margin in your life financially. But let's talk about the downside, because this full-time plus entrepreneurship route can also become incredibly exhausting. You're essentially stacking a second job on top of an already demanding career. With business, boundaries can be slippery. And burnout, it absolutely can happen here. I will say that the thing that sometimes tempers this exhaustion of a full-time job and entrepreneurship is excitement. There's an energy that comes with building something that you genuinely care about. There is a power to the passion that you'll likely feel when you start to take the steps to make that dream of yours a reality. Sometimes clinicians are exhausted from everything medicine is demanding, but energized by the dream of entrepreneurship. But eventually, time can become a bottleneck with this approach. It becomes difficult to scale a business when it only receives the leftovers of your energy and attention. This stage often requires incredibly intentional boundaries and strategy, and something eventually makes you realize that it's not that sustainable for long. So, if you choose this route, I'd encourage you to think less about balance right now and more about a season of investing in your business and your future, and more flexibility and more time freedom in the future. There may be seasons where the business grows slower in order to protect your peace and your health and your relationships, and that is absolutely okay. Option two, transition to part time clinical work while building the business. This is the path I personally love talking about because I think it creates a really interesting middle ground for clinicians. You maintain some degree of clinical income while intentionally creating a space to build the business. This might look like dropping down your clinical days in a week, PRN work, or finding a locums position, picking up some telemedicine or inbox coverage, weekend shifts, a flexible part-time role, or the single easiest thing is to see if your current employer will let you drop a day or go down to part-time there. The biggest advantage of a part-time plus entrepreneurship route is time. I have found that creativity needs time and space to grow and blossom. Action requires energy, commitment, and consistency over time. The benefit of part time and business growth simultaneously is that you have time to actually work on the business instead of only squeezing it into the cracks of your life or feeling like you don't have time to do strategy or growth because you're just getting the tasks done. And from a monthly budget standpoint, you still have that clinical income coming in. That can reduce an enormous amount of pressure and not make you feel like your business has to make money on day one. Especially, this is important early in entrepreneurship when revenue can be inconsistent or unpredictable or seasonal or non-existent at first because you don't understand how to pay yourself or how profit and loss works or how to do, revenue generating tasks. That clinical income becomes your runway. But this part-time plus entrepreneurship path has its own challenges too. Many clinicians in this phase feel deeply pulled in two directions. Like you have one foot in the past and one foot in the future. You're trying to build that future, you're trying to build that business while still maintaining the current version of your identity as a professional and as a clinician. You're holding on to that relative illusion of employed stability, and it feels like entrepreneurship is really unpredictable. Part of you is still that clinician, while part of you is becoming an entrepreneur. And sometimes that can feel a little emotionally disorienting, like you're both staying and leaving, like you're mentally at work and not at work. But here's the reality that businesses are harder to scale when they're only receiving 10 or 15 or 20 of your hours a week. So in that way, when you do this part-time clinical work and usually full-time entrepreneurship, progress can feel a little slower than you want it to. And inconsistency becomes a challenge where sometimes you're giving it 5, 7, 10 hours a week, and sometimes you're able to devote 20 or 30 hours in a week. You finally get momentum and that forward motion in the business, and then you have several clinical shifts in a row where you can't put in the time or have the calls. Or your business starts growing and suddenly your clinical schedule feels frustrating and like it's pulling you away from the thing that you want to do instead of feeling comforting. This stage can feel awkward, like you have too many pots on the stove and your attention is divided. The benefit here is that you're proving the proof of concept of your business model while reducing the financial risk that your family is taking on. In this process, you're learning what sells, what people actually need, how to test the market, how to market and sell, what you enjoy in entrepreneurship, what drains you, and whether or not entrepreneurship truly aligns with the life that you are trying to build. And that information is incredibly valuable if and when you're ready to lean into entrepreneurship full time and pivot away from clinical practice as you do. Option 3 is to quit clinical medicine cold turkey and go all in on entrepreneurship. This is the most dramatic path. And yes, some clinicians choose to walk this path. They leave the job and start the business. They go all in. There is no backup plan, no dipping your toes in the water, no dabbling. Just here we go. We're doing this. Buckle up. Now, let me say this. Sometimes massive dramatic action has the ability to create massive momentum because you're in a position where entrepreneurship is no longer optional, where you need it to pay your bills to support your family. And in that way, you move differently and take different risks and different actions. You become incredibly focused. You solve problems faster. You stop treating the business like a hobby. And it's the opportunity to really scale and sort of fully send on this dream of running a small business, of entrepreneurship as the way that you support your family. There is something so powerful about that full send level of commitment. Suddenly, it's not optional. It's not a little side hustle. It has to work. And that urgency can absolutely accelerate growth, but it can also feel like it's pressuring you to make it work before you know how to make it work. This path is not for the faint of heart. Financially, it can feel incredibly stressful. You're asking a baby business to feed your family from day one, and that's a tall order. Businesses are often unstable early on. Startups are not knowing for their consistency in terms of paying people and generating revenue right out of the gate. In fact, with most startups, revenue fluctuates, clients wax and wane, deals fall through, then they succeed, then they fall through again. You don't have this pipeline of steady stream of clients. You don't yet have all of these testimonials. Launches can flop, algorithms can change, and offers need reiteration and refinement. That's normal. That's a normal part of owning and operating a small business, but it can feel very different emotionally when your family's monthly budget depends on it working. This path of quitting clinical medicine and launching into entrepreneurship without a second glance back at your clinical practice often works best for clinicians who have strong savings, low debt, a supportive partner, or you're in a situation where you have multiple income households, significant financial margin where you don't need your income at this time, or you have a business that's already proven traction and you know if you can start to get more hours in the seat, you can get it to scale. I think oftentimes social media glamorizes this route. The dramatic resignation, the I quit my job today to chase my dreams moment, the packing up your box of stuff and leaving that desk and clinical medicine, the I retired from bedside medicine at the age of 30 moments where they're documenting these things. But what people don't always show on those social media platforms and in those highlight reels is the anxiety, the pressure, the sleepless nights, that inconsistent income, and the emotional roller coaster that can come with entrepreneurship. Going all in can absolutely work. But before you make that choice, take a really good look at your finances, get your ducks in a row before you launch onto this path, and realize that you're going to need a runway before you launch this rocket. So, which path is best for you? Honestly, the best path for you is the one that aligns with your financial reality, your nervous system and risk tolerance, your current life and responsibilities, your goals and dreams, your support system, and the realities of the season of life that you're in. Some people thrive with the pressure of going all in, and some crave the safety of maintaining clinical income while they build. Some people intentionally choose slow and sustainable growth that doesn't cause them to lose sleep. And none of these choices, all three of these paths lead to small business ownership. None of them make you less entrepreneurial in nature. There is no single right way to make this pivot from clinical practice into entrepreneurship. I think one of the most important mindset shifts that clinicians need to make is that entrepreneurship is not all or nothing. You do not have to turn your back on your clinical career or burn it to the ground in order to build something meaningful outside of clinical medicine. You are allowed to transition strategically. You're allowed to build slowly and experiment carefully and protect your peace and your mental and physical health along the way, maintain your clinical income, and create optionality in your life. Because ultimately, that's what entrepreneurship often creates: options. The option to reduce hours, to work differently, to change settings or specialties, to create impact in the world outside of the exam room. My goal here is to help so many clinicians so that they have the option to make medicine a choice instead of an obligation. I think more clinicians are realizing that their skills were always bigger than one role inside of the system of clinical medicine. As a clinician, you already know how to communicate, solve problems, lead under pressure, think critically, adapt quickly, build trust. Now it's simply about learning how to apply those same skills in a different environment. And if entrepreneurship has been calling you, has been tugging at your heart, it's something that you've been losing sleep thinking about, and you've realized that your skills may in fact be bigger than your current clinical role, that's the reason that I created the Clinician Entrepreneur Collective. CEC is where students learn how to translate the skills they already have from practicing clinical medicine into sustainable businesses, additional income streams, and careers with more flexibility and time freedom. If you're feeling called to start a business, join the waitlist for Clinician Entrepreneur Collective at tracybingaman.com/waitlist or find the link in the show notes. Because medicine may be your training, but it doesn't have to be your only path. That's all for today. This PApreneur is out.